model is to hold data at runtime, but it will hold the data at runtime within the front-end application inside browser. So that means JSON model is used to share data with multiple views. It can hold data at runtime, so that's the reason why it is capable of sharing data with multiple views within the front-end application. It holds data at runtime, so it can share data with multiple views within the front-end application. That's the main purpose of JSON model. And JSON model is considered as client-side model. It is considered as client-side model. It is considered as client-side model. Why? Because execution and holding of data is happening always within the front end without interacting with the server. So because JSON model is executed and operated within the front-end application only. That means within browser only. There is no interaction with the server. So that's the reason why JSON model is considered as client-side model. JSON model doesn't interact with server. It doesn't deal with database operations. JSON model is executed and operated within the front end. It can just hold the data, but it cannot perform database operations. It can hold data at runtime within the front end. It can share data with multiple views within the front end. That's the reason why it is considered as client-side model. It doesn't interact with server. It doesn't perform database activities. So it's a client-side model. So in our case, what I want to do is, here you can see there is a table. If I select a record here, the selected record I want to transfer to third view. And in third view, I'm expecting inside a form. If I select a record, the selected record I'm expecting in third view inside a simple form. So that means the data from second view has to be transferred to third view. In third view, it has to be displayed in a form. So the selected record of table from object view must be transferred to simple form of third view. So that's the expectation here. The selected record of table from object view must be transferred to simple form of third view. So to do this, we have to make use of JSON model. And you can make JSON model global, then you can share data with any view. Not only third view, you can share data with fourth view, fifth view, or any other view. So what exactly we are going to do is, here there is a view, object view, which is technically second view. And then there is third view, which we have created in the last session. So inside object view, earlier we have created a table, and table contains collection of records here. It contains collection of records, something like this. Say suppose user has selected third record. Say suppose user has selected third record, which contains these values. Assume that user has selected third record. There are collection of records in a table, but think that third record is selected here. So that selected record, I want to transfer to third view. From second view, I want to transfer that selected record to third view. In third view, I'm expecting a simple form here with collection of labels and string elements. In simple form, I'm expecting all these things, like I want to display selected user ID is selected, something like first name is. I want to display that selected record values here. So the selected record values I'm expecting inside third view here, inside a simple form. So that means here our expectation is to see these values. For example, third record is selected in second view. So third record values has to be displayed here. So this is our overall expectation. From second view, the selected record has to be transferred to third view. In third view, we are expecting that record values in a simple form. And in the last session, we have already applied navigation between these views. This navigation has already done in the last session with the help of routing technique. Forward navigation and backward navigation. So this is covered in the last session. But in today's session, we'll try to focus on data transfer. So if you want to share data with multiple views, or if you want to share data from one view to another view, to share data with multiple views or to share data from one view to another view, that means data transfer from one view to another view. In that case, it is recommended to use JSON model. And you have to make this JSON model global. If you make JSON model global, the data can be transferred to multiple views of that application. The model becomes global. The data can be shared across that entire app to multiple views. And inside JSON model, it is better to use some object, for example, data object here. Declare one data object like this with empty flower brackets. After declaring data object, it's better to mention the fields data object dot something like user ID, and you can hold the data here. Data object dot first name, you can hold the values here. Data object dot last name. So whichever values you want to hold, you can hold it inside data object by mentioning the field names. So whichever values you want to share, for those values, try to mention the respective fields inside data object. Initially declare data object as empty data object here. Then you can add the fields to data object by holding the values at runtime. So that means you can hold the values, something like 1003. So whichever values you want to transfer, those values you can hold it inside data object by using its field name. And this data object is technically global. So this is how you can maintain values inside data object and make data object global. So then only data transfer can happen from one view to another view, or you can share data with multiple views. So what you need to do is, in our previous sessions, first you need to capture selected record from table. Capture selected record from a table. That we have already done it. After capturing selected record from a table, hold that selected record values inside data object. Earlier, we were just printing the values as a message. We displayed values as message earlier. Now what I want to do is, I want to hold those selected record values inside data object. After that, you need to create a JSON model. Assign data object to JSON model. You have to assign data object to JSON model, and you have to make JSON model global. You have to make JSON model global, and then finally navigate to third view. We have earlier implemented this navigation. How to navigate to third view, that we have already done. But in this process, finally you have to navigate to third view. In previous sessions, we have captured selected record from table. That is done. And in the last session, we have navigated to third view. That is also done. The only thing that you need to add here is you have to hold the selected record values inside data object. Create JSON model and assign data object inside JSON model and make JSON model global. So that is what we need to do additionally inside capture record EH event handler. In capture record EH event handler, we have to add these activities: holding the record in data object, creating JSON model, assigning data object to JSON model, making JSON model global. So that means the values from this object view will be transferred to this data object here. The values from this one object view table will be transferred to something like data object here. Values from object view table will be transferred to a data object inside JSON model. And this JSON model is global. So data object is technically global because data object is placed inside JSON model. JSON model is global, so the values becomes global. Then you can share the data with third view or fourth view or any other view here. So whatever values that are captured, whichever values are captured from object view, you have to put it inside data object here, inside JSON model. And this JSON model data object fields should be used in data binding. So here, the fields should be referred here in data binding. The data object fields must be used in data binding. So because of that, the values will be displayed in third view. So in third view, what you need to do is you need to create simple form with labels and, for example, screen elements. In our case, for example, input fields. Depending upon requirement, you can create your screen elements. In our case, let us create simple form with labels and input fields. After that, you need to maintain data binding. Maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields. With JSON model data object fields. That's it. You have to maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields for the simple form screen elements. Then whatever values that are part of JSON model, those values will reach third view. From second view, the values are transferred to JSON model. Through JSON model, with the help of data bindings, you are able to display in third view. From second view, the values are transferred to JSON model data object. JSON model is global, and because of data bindings, the values are transferred to third view. Just you need to maintain data binding. Data binding is happening with data object fields here. Then the values will be displayed here automatically. So values of table of second view will be transferred to JSON model data object. JSON model is global, and if you maintain data bindings, then the values will reach third view simple form automatically. In whichever view you want to display those values, in that view you have to maintain data bindings. That's it. It can be third view, fourth view, or fifth view. In that respective view, you can maintain data bindings with JSON model data object fields. In that respective view, the values will be displayed automatically. Okay, so let me save this and let us do it exactly as it is. Let me go with the procedure here. Step 1, you can go to object view. Sorry, directly first let us go to object controller.js file. You can go to capture record event handler. This is the event handler assigned to a table already. So go to that event handler and you have to add some few more lines of code. Capture record event handler. Inside that, you can update the code as below. The existing code, make some changes and update the code as below. That is basically step 1. So let me go to object controller here. And don't forget there is a table. Table contains capture record event handler. There's a table. Table contains selection change event. For that capture record is an event handler. It is assigned earlier. So let us go to that event handler. Capture record So you can see this. Capture record event handler. So in this event handler, we have already written the code to capture the record, selected record from a table, and we are navigating to third view. We have captured selected record from table with these lines, and we are navigating to third view. This code is available. But JSON model code is not available. So what you do is, instead of holding the values inside separate variables, instead of holding all these values in separate variables, what you do is define one data object here. Use one data object. You can give XYZ object name. It doesn't matter. The object name can be anything here. In our case, to make it more meaningful, we are calling it as data object because it is going to hold the data. So empty data object you can declare by using empty flower brackets here. Empty flower brackets. So data object is declared with empty flower brackets. Here we need not use new keyword because we are not creating object for any class. We are not creating object for any class. So new keyword is not required. Just use empty flower brackets. That becomes an empty object. New keyword is not required because we are not creating object for any class. Instead, we are creating empty object. So use empty flower brackets. And inside this data object, you can hold all these values. Instead of holding in individual variables, it's better to put all those values in empty object here, like data object dot the field name, for example, user ID. Data object dot something like first name. So the selected record values of a table is captured and those values are maintained as part of data object now. So we captured selected record from a table. That is long back we have done it. But today now we are trying to hold that selected record values inside data object. Hold that selected record values inside data object. That is what we have done by declaring a data object as an empty data object. On top of that, we are adding the fields to the data object. We are holding the values of selected record of a table. Capture selected record values from table and hold the values inside data object, something like this. In my case, I'm using the name of the object as data object, but in your case, you can use XYZ ABC object. Now, after this, now we need to create JSON model that should be operated in the front end. You have to create JSON model. So to create JSON model, you can use where keyword, JSON model, new SAP UI model dot JSON dot JSON model. So JSON model is one of the class here. You can see JSON model is one of the class. So you can use that. So here we are trying to create object for JSON model class. JSON model class belongs to SAP UI model.json library. We are creating object for JSON model class. JSON model class is a standard class that is part of SAP UI model.json library. To create object for any class, you have to use new keyword. So very simple. We created JSON model here for JSON model class. Now you can assign data object to JSON model. Now assign data object to JSON model here. So you can use JSON model dot set data. Set data is a method. And why don't you set this data object here? You can pass data object here. Inside JSON model, we are setting the data by using set data method. And what type of data we are setting? We are setting data object data here. So whichever values that are part of data object, that will be available inside JSON model after executing this line. So that means all these values will be internally part of JSON model now. But you need to make JSON model global, then only you can share data with multiple views. After setting data object to JSON model, you have to make JSON model global. Then only the data is shared with multiple views. So the next step is make JSON model global. So if you want to make JSON model global, you can use this dot get owner component dot set model, and you can pass JSON model, comma, provide the model name. For example, JSON model. Use some model name. Now globally, you can refer this model by using this model name. For example, JSON model. The model name can be XYZ model here. You can give any name. To make it more meaningful, let us make the global name as JSON model. That's a global model name according to this code. So this dot get owner component dot set model, you're making JSON model global with some model name. And that should be used in the view level for data bindings to share the data with respect to view. If you use this dot set model and provide JSON model and provide some model name, then this model becomes local to that particular view. This model becomes local to object view and object controller. That's it. You can't share the data with other views. So this is to make JSON model global, and this is to make JSON model local to that view. The difference between these two lines, so this syntax to make JSON model global, then you can use this syntax. To make JSON model local to a particular view, then you can use this syntax. This dot set model, pass JSON model with some model name. So that's the difference between these two statements here. This statement will make JSON model global to all the views, and this statement will make JSON model local to a particular view in which the code is implemented. So this dot get owner component dot set model, that becomes global. This dot set model, it is local. JSON model global versus local. JSON model statement, which indicates global versus local. Right. So now, after making JSON model global, you have to navigate to third view that we have already implemented in the last session. So here, this dot go to third view EH. This dot go to third view EH. This is to navigate to third view. That is done in the last session. So we need not implement navigation now. So this is the oral code that you can implement. Let me explain this. Capture record EH event handler. Inside this event handler, we have added few more lines of code in today's session. So what we're trying to do is all these lines ultimately will capture selected record from table and holding those values inside data object. Especially these lines, we are trying to hold the selected record values of a table inside data object. Capture selected record values from table, and we are trying to hold selected record values inside data object. That's the purpose of these lines. After that, we have created an object for JSON model class. Here we are creating an object for JSON model class, or simply call it as create JSON model. Create object for JSON model, or simply call it as create JSON model. And then for JSON model, we are assigning data object. Data object contains all these things. So JSON model dot set data and passing data object here. JSON model dot set data, we are passing data object. So that means we are assigning data object to JSON model. Assign data object to JSON model. And we are using this dot get owner component dot set model, providing model name as well as passing the JSON model. This model name will be referred in the respective target views. Whichever view has to take the data from JSON model, in that target view, you have to refer this model name. So here, this statement is mainly to make JSON model global. make JSON model global. And finally, we are navigating to third view. This is to navigate to third view. Very simple. Now, after that, step 2 is open thirdview.xml file. Create simple form. Go to thirdview.xml file, create simple form. Or else first try to register one library. In thirdview.xml file, register the library related to simple form on top section of a view. So let me go to third view here. In third view, here I want to add a library related to form, XMLNS colon something like form. For example, SAP UI layout.form. This is a library which contains simple form class. I want to use simple form class in third view. So let us register that. Simple form class belongs to this library. So we have registered that library in third view now because I'm expecting simple form in third view. SAP.UI.layout.form. Very simple. After registering this, step 3, create simple form with collection of labels and input fields. Create simple form with collection of labels and input fields. Labels and screen elements. In our case, first let me use input fields. And the most important is you have to maintain data binding relationship with JSON model data object fields. You want to share data with third view, then third view simple form should maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields. That is, implement below code. Step 4, you can save all the files run the app. So first let me go to step 3. In step 3 also we are trying to open thirdview.xml file. In third view XML file, we have to create simple form, maintain data bindings. So create a form, maintain data bindings. Data binding is happening with JSON model data object fields. If you are expecting the values in fifth view, then go to fifth view, create screen elements, maintain data binding. That's it. So let me go to this third view. In third view, the library is registered. Now let us not worry about image and this. First, directly let me create simple form after this button. So let me create simple form here. Form. Create simple form with some title. simple form with selected record. Can use some layout. Inside simple form, let me take some labels and screen elements, like for example, input fields. Use a design. Let me take some labels like this. Now, on top of labels, I want to take input fields. Let me provide some labels here, like the label can be anything. Right, so not only labels, I want to create input fields so that I can perform other database operations like inserting new record, updating existing record, deleting the record. For that, I want to create some input fields here. The coming days, we are going to deal with insert, delete, update operations through this form. For that reason, let me create input fields here. Input fields with some ID. And input fields contains value property. And you can use some width, example 250 pixel. Okay, so let me use all input fields here. Each input field, let me provide some ID. For example, my user ID, my first name. Provide some ID for each of these input fields so that we can access these input fields for database operations in the coming days. So input fields with labels are created here. But the most important is you need to maintain data binding with these input fields for value property. Value property is an important property for data binding. If you are using text screen element, you can use text property. For text screen element, you can use text property for data binding. For input fields, you have to use value property for data binding. So here, what we need to do is we have to maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields. So whatever field names are used inside data object, the same field names should be referred in third view. Whichever fields that are part of JSON model data object, those field names as it is you can access in third view. Because of data bindings, the data is shared from JSON model to third view. So here you can see data object contains user ID, but that model is provided as JSON model. So let us use that as a prefix. Here the model name which is globally provided as JSON model. So use that as a prefix. Within flower brackets, use that as a prefix. And then greater than slash that data object field name. Data object field name you have to provide directly here. The data object field, that is user ID. So let us provide directly here. Simple. Greater than slash data object field name. So double quotes, flower brackets, then JSON model name, which is globally provided, greater than slash the data object field name, that is first name here. The same syntax, you can use it here. third field in data object is last name. Fourth field in data object is email ID. But they are part of JSON model, so you have to use JSON model as a prefix. Then country and salary. And then there is phone. You can save it now. So what we're trying to do is we're just trying to maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields by using this syntax. So because of data bindings, the data is taken by third view from JSON model. Third view will take the data automatically from JSON model because of data bindings. So let us test it. If it is working, then we can finalize this code. Now let me go to table. In table, say suppose I'm selecting one of the record here, 1013. So now you can see 1013. So that selected record values are displayed in third view now. We are in third view. In third view, there is a simple form. Simple form is displaying selected record values here because of data bindings. You can go back. You can select some other record, for example, 1007. So that 1007, that selected record values are displayed here. You can go back. For example, you can select 1009. So that selected record values are displayed here. So always the latest record, the latest selected record will be displayed in a third view because JSON model always holds the latest selected record according to our code. Table is displaying collection of records, but user is making a selection. The latest selected record is maintained in JSON model. The latest selected record of JSON model will automatically comes to third view, always. So it's working fine as of now. You can go to any record, first record, second record, or last record, whatever it may be. So that selected record values will come to this. Okay, so if you want, you can add one property here. Text direction. Not mandatory, but it's better to use it. So now they're arranged, the labels are properly arranged here. Now you can see that. And whichever record is selected, so that selected record will come to third view. You can see that. Now, in the coming days, we are going to improvise this. We are going to add a new record. We are going to insert a record. We are going to update the record. We are going to delete the record. But as of now, the selected record of table is transferred to third view with the help of JSON model internally. So not only that, but say suppose think like this. Here there is a table. In table there are other elements. I want to display those things also. We are able to display these values. But say suppose I want to display status. It's a virtual field, image, checkbox, switch, rating, slider, progress, something like this. All these values I want to transfer. I want to display these things also as part of the third view simple form. Not only actual record. As of now, we are able to display actual record in third view. But on top of actual record, I want to display values for virtual fields also. Image, checkbox, switch, rating, slider, progress indicator, etc. So in that case, You can add the screen elements here and you can apply conditions. Formatter function will not work here. What you do is here you can add some condition here. For example, if data object dot, for example, salary greater than, for example, 80,000, that's a condition used in formatter function. The same thing you can use it here. You can use if else. If data object dot salary greater than 80,000, then I want to generate virtual fields. Then that code you can write it here. Data object dot, you can assign virtual field name, for example, status, as, for example, experienced employee. The condition is false. I want to display fresher employee. Salary greater than 80,000. I want to assign data object with a virtual field name. For example, for image is a field name. I want to use, for example, success.zip file or something like green color.zip file. The condition is false. I want to assign red color.zip file. Salary greater than 80,000. I want to generate virtual field data object dot, for example, checkbox. I want to display true. Selected checkbox. The condition is false. I want to assign false. Deselected checkbox. Similarly, the same condition, if condition is true, salary greater than 80,000, if the condition is true, in data object, I want to add one more virtual field, for example, switch. Switch should be on, so you can pass true. Condition is false, the switch should be off, so you can make it false. Salary greater than 80,000. I want to add one more virtual field in data object dot, for example, rating indicator. For that, let me add 4-star here. The condition is false. I want to add 2-star here. Similarly, if you want, you can add data object dot, for example, progress indicator. For that, let me add 80 here. The condition is false. Let me add, for example, 40 here. For slider, I can use data object dot, for example, slider. You can make it 80 here. 80%. The condition is false. I want to make it 40% here. So in this case, the formatter function will not work. So you can apply that if else within this controller event handler, because the values has to be passed to third view simple form. You can apply conditions within this event handler, capture record event handler before navigating to third view. In this event handler for data object, we are adding some virtual fields inside data object, and that too we are adding the values based on some condition. For example, salary greater than 80,000. Because the same thing is referred inside your formatter functions. Now in third view, what you need to do, you need to add some more labels here. In third view, you need to add labels and the corresponding screen elements. How many virtual fields are added? Status, image, checkbox, switch, 7 fields. Okay, let me add 7 labels. This is like label for virtual fields. Let me use labels like, for example, selected status here, or selected image, selected, for example, checkbox. switch, rating, progress, indicator, and slider. You can give any label just to make it meaningful. I'm using the name as that label text as screen element name. Now, what's the actual screen element here? Let me use text screen element text property. And here you need to use cover brackets. You need to maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields. I want to use status with text screen element text property, but you have to get the values from JSON model data object. So data binding with JSON model data object field has to be maintained here. What's the model name? JSON model is a model name, so that should be used as a prefix. Greater than slash data object virtual field name is status here. That's it. Status is a virtual field name in data object. You can use that. Similarly, I want to use image src property. Let me use width and height. And here for image src is a main property. For this you have to maintain data binding. So use flower brackets. Provide model name as a prefix. JSON model is a prefix. Greater than slash that data object field name. Data object field name in this case is image. So let us use that here. So that means image src property is maintaining data binding with JSON model data object field. Similarly, let us create checkbox. Checkbox contains selected property. For that property, you can maintain data binding with JSON model data object field. That is, checkbox is a field name in data object. You can use that here. So data binding is maintained here with JSON model data object field, that is checkbox. Similarly, let me use switch screen element. State is a property. For that, you can maintain data binding with JSON model data object field. JSON model greater than slash data object field name, that is switch. And use it here. You can use any screen element in the target view, but you have to maintain data binding with JSON model data object field. So here I want to use rating indicator. Rating indicator contains value property. That's an important property. For that property, you can maintain data binding with JSON model data object field with greater than slash data object field name, that is rating here. Similarly, let us go for progress indicator. Progress indicator contains percent value property. It's an important property. For that, you can maintain data binding with JSON model data object field name. That is progress here. JSON model is the name of the model which is globally provided. So use that as a prefix in the target views. Then greater than slash provide the data object field name. So for progress indicator, let me add some width. And finally, let me use slider. Slider contains value property. Let me use width. Contains value property. For that, you can maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields. Use flower brackets JSON model name greater than slash the data object field name, that is slider, which is technically virtual field. So you can use any screen element in target view. That means in third view, you can use any screen element, but you have to establish data binding with data object JSON model. In third view, you can create simple form with any field, any screen element. But the main point here is you have to establish data binding with JSON model data object fields. That plays an important role. Okay, so let me test it now, whether it works or not. So let me go to table. Let me select one of the record, for example, 1016. So now you can see 1016 Santosh, that record values are displayed here. Not only record values, it is displaying the virtual field values. Salary is greater than 80,000, so it is displaying text as experienced employee. The image is green color image. Checkbox is selected, switch is on, rating is 4-star, progress and slider is up to 80. So the condition is also working fine. As it is, we are able to get it here. Salary greater than 80,000. So the text is experienced employees. Green color image, checkbox selected, switch is on, rating is 4-star, slider and progress is up to 80. So the condition, whatever is used in controller, it is working here. Before navigating to third view, the condition is applied and the values are populated inside data object. Because of data binding, the values are displayed here. Now say suppose if I go back, let me select one of the record, for example, 1012. So 1012, that's Sachin pilot. So that record is displayed here. And the text is fresher employee. Image is red color. Switch is off. Checkbox is not selected. Rating is 2-star. And slider and progress indicator is up to 40. So the condition is working fine. So here, salary is less than 80,000. So text is fresher employee, red color image, switch is off, checkbox is not selected, rating is 2-star, slider and progress is up to 40. So it is working according to our expectation. So as a developer in third view, what you need to do is just establish data binding with data object, JSON model data object fields. That is important here. Let me take that screenshot. So in third view simple form, we're trying to establish data binding with JSON model data object fields here. That plays an important role. So in whichever view you try to maintain data binding, in that respective view, you can expect the values. Just data binding is enough. You need not create JSON model again and again. You can use the same existing JSON model, but in target views, wherever you are expecting the values to be shared, for those fields, maintain data binding in this manner. So technically here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to maintain data bindings with JSON model data object fields. That is important here. Maintain data binding with JSON model data object fields. In our case, we are trying to do it in third view because I'm expecting those values in third view. If you want, you can go to fourth view and you can maintain data bindings. Then there also you can expect the values. So here, maintain data bindings with JSON model data object fields in target view. So now the entire functionality is working fine. Let me copy this capture record EH event handler. In step 1, go to capture record EH event handler, update the code as below. The oral code with condition. If you want, you can remove that condition. It's not mandatory. It is not required. This is capture record EH event handler. And don't forget to register this library because we are using simple form in third view. This is a library related to simple form class. Then go to third view.xml, create simple form, maintain data bindings. So let me copy those lines. So this is simple form with all fields I'm providing. Okay, so here, let me just give some basic note. Difference between OData model, JSON model, and resource model. Coming days, we are going to use resource model, but let me just give some basic difference. Difference between OData model, JSON model, and resource model. OData model, JSON model, and resource model. So here, these are three models you can compare, but the purpose of each model is different. One model is not an alternative for another model. The purpose of these three models are for three different reasons we have to use it. To develop end-to-end application, all three models plays an important role. One model is not an alternative for another model. It's not an alternative models. They're having its own purpose. So OData model purpose is to interact with backend to consume the service. OData model is used to consume or access OData service. And OData model is used to trigger database operations. In the coming days, we are going to use OData model to trigger database operations of OData services in backend server. The purpose of OData model is to trigger database operations of OData service in backend server. OData model is used to send data and receive data. OData model is to send data and receive data between front-end application and backend server. OData model is considered as server-side model. OData model is considered as server-side model because OData model executes OData service in the backend server. OData model triggers database operations in the backend server. That's the reason why OData model is server-side model. Because OData model is executing OData services with database operations at server side. Why OData model is server side model? Because OData model is executing OData services with database operations at server side. That's the reason why OData model is a server side model. It will interact with the server. It will execute OData services in the server. It will trigger database operations in the server. That's the reason why it is server side model. Now, what about JSON model? So JSON model is used to hold data at runtime within the front-end application. That means within the browser, this is happening. Within the browser, the execution is happening, not in the server. JSON model is holding the data at runtime, but it happens within the front end, within the browser only. It has no interaction with the server directly. But the purpose is JSON model is used to share data with multiple views within the front-end app. The purpose of JSON model is to share data with multiple views within the front-end app. That means it can transfer data from one view to another view. That means it can share data with multiple views. JSON model is considered as client-side model. JSON model is considered as client-side model because JSON model is executed always in the front end, within front end app. That means within the browser always. JSON model doesn't interact with backend. JSON model doesn't interact with backend. JSON model is executed always within the front end, within the browser. No interaction with the server. That's the reason why it is a client-side model. It's a front-end model. There is another model, that is resource model. So this resource model, we are going to use it in the coming days. But let me write the same basic points here. Resource model is used to maintain key equal to text value pairs. The purpose of resource model is to maintain key equal to text value pairs in dot properties file. There is a concept like dot properties file. In that properties file, we maintain key equal to text value pairs. That is going to happen with the help of resource model. Resource model is used to load text values at runtime for corresponding keys from dot properties file. At runtime will happen from dot properties file. The resource model is to maintain key equal to text value pairs inside properties file, and it is to load the text values from corresponding keys from the dot properties file at runtime. So this you will experience in the coming days. How to load text values from properties file, you will understand in the coming days. But that is going to happen with the help of resource model. And this resource model okay, so this resource model is used for achieving internationalization. The resource model can also be used to achieve internationalization. That is like technically in shortcut we call it as I18N, and that we are going to achieve with the help of dot properties file. Resource model maintains key equal to text value pairs. It loads text values at runtime. But ultimately, we can also achieve internationalization, that is I18N. It is to support, the purpose is to support multiple languages for end users. The purpose of achieving internationalization is to support multiple languages for end users. That's the reason why we have to use properties file with the help of key equal to text value pairs. Our application can be accessed in multiple languages. Our application can be accessed in multiple languages by different users. That we are calling it as internationalization. And that is possible with the help of dot properties file with the help of key equal to text value pairs, which is done through a concept like resource model. And this resource model is also a front-end model. Resource model is considered. Resource model is considered as client-side model because it doesn't interact with server. This model is also executed within the front end because resource model and properties files are executed within the front end app only. Resource model and dot properties files are operated and executed within the front end application only. That's the reason why resource model is also considered as client-side model. It doesn't interact with server. Resource model doesn't connect to server. It has nothing to do with server, no interaction with the server, always operated within the front end. That's the reason why it is a front end model, simply called it, considered as client-side model. So just remember these three basic differences for all these three different concepts here. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can ask me now.
Hi, sir. This is Manoj.
Yeah, what's the doubt?
Yeah, actually, while doing reverse navigation, means backward navigation from third view to object view, we have used one number, right? 101 or something like that. What is that number?
That is just to have a default value.
So we can use any number, right?
You can use any user ID. Why? Because here, if you go to manifest.json file, in the default configuration, which is provided by SAP, it contains some object ID. So that we are satisfying here.
So how to find that?
Here you can see object ID. You can pass a dynamic value, that is user ID, you can pass it. Because from EMP set, the object ID, when we configure an application through template, it will by default take the user ID here. So to satisfy
actually,
this,
yes, sir.
yeah, tell me.
Actually, I was doing same thing from fourth view to object view using some dynamic number, but it did not work.
That value must exist as part of entity set. If that value is not part of entity set, then you'll be in trouble. So here, why? Because in pattern matching, SAP is internally using entity set. This is a default configuration. In default configuration, whenever you reach object view, it is expecting an entity set related values. Entity set is EMP set. It is expecting some value from that entity set. If you pass a value which is not part of that entity set, then it may not work.
So then how to find out, sir, whether it is part of entity set, that value is existing or not?
You have to pass a dynamic value, otherwise you capture the value like this and pass it. Otherwise, here you can see we are passing, right, selected row dot get property and user ID, and pass this user ID value dynamically if you want.
Okay.
Okay,
Sir,
yeah.
actually, if you have 1 or 2 minutes, can you open my project, because I was doing some assignment. I am facing some issue.
Assignment related solutions I'll provide in one separate project. Don't worry. Okay, let us not worry about assignments now. Assignment related all solutions, I'll provide it in one project file. From that, you can cross check and compare. Okay, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
You can pass a dynamic value before reaching object view, because object view is expecting value from an entity set, that is EMP set, as per default configuration when application is created through template. So because of that reason, we are passing some 1001 or 1002 or 1003, whatever value you can pass any user ID, but that should be part of entity set, just because manifest.json file contains a default configuration which is expecting a value from entity set. Other students also, please remember this.
Hi, this is
Next
Kate.
doubt. Yeah, what's the doubt?
By using JSON model, can we hold multiple rows instead of single row?
Yes, of course. We can. Yes, we can. That also we are going to do it. Yes, we can pass multiple records or multiple rows inside data object JSON model. That is possible. How we are going to do it? Basically, in data object, we are going to use one array.
Okay.
We can use some array. In that array, you can hold collection of records. So data object can hold collection of records directly in the form of an array. So that data object we can assign to JSON model. So that means we can pass multiple records also from one view to another view. That is possible. And in one of the example I am going to provide that code as well. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
This side, Mohit.
Yeah, what's the doubt?
Yeah, actually, yesterday I was practicing and I put the property text direction right to left as you write, and I forgot to put the inverted commas. It did not show the error, but it is not running, and I just inspect. Yeah, error is
Press
not
F12
showing.
and check the output. Press F12 in the output.
Yeah, but in the inspect, I did not find what is the error. Why my screen is not load in the browser?
Check the.
Can you show,
No,
sir?
all the errors are not straightforward. Whatever mistakes you make, browser will not give you this direct message. It will not help you to correct directly. Sometimes it will give direct error messages, sometimes indirect error messages, sometimes it will not display at all. So here, if I make something like in third view, if I remove some double quotes here, so here itself you will find a problem. That is, if at browser level it will not directly display when you run the app. Instead, here itself you are getting some red color icon. That means there is some problem in your code directly.
Can you remove, sir, at right to left double quote in text direction?
Whatever it is.
Actually, yesterday I was checking and it is not showing the error as you.
So here you can see, if I remove double quotes, I'm removing double quotes here. After RTL, one of the double quotes is removed. So now you are getting that error message here. You can see In the web ID itself, it is showing why you need to go to F12. In F12, the errors are not straightforward. So in some errors, you can directly identify in the web ID itself. So here,
Okay, sir.
I've removed the double quotes. I've removed double quotes here. Okay, there is no double quotes. Ending double quotes is not available. So you're getting a red color tick mark symbol. Text direction, something is expected. It's not a straightforward error, but something it is saying there is some problem in text direction property.
Okay, sir.
So that means here itself, it is throwing some syntax error. So in that case, it will not go to third screen, I think. Even it goes to third screen, it will not display that label or input fields.
Okay, sir.
So let me add that
Sir,
double
is
quote.
there any way? Yeah, sir, is there any way to debug controller file?
Debugging, we are going to discuss. That's a separate session. We are going to do it. Debugging, we are going to discuss later after dealing with multiple records, how to insert multiple records. In that complex scenario, we'll try to do that to understand all the in-depth, all the options of debugging. So that scenario is best suitable. So wait for some more days for debugging. Yeah, next doubt.
Yeah, sir, in controller file, sometimes we are using double quote and sometimes we are using a single quote. So how to identify that?
If something is case sensitive, then you have to use it. Here I've used double quotes every time, right? When we are passing the static value, here I'm using double quotes, very single quote, and I think I never use single quote here in controller.
I have seen somewhere.
We started from submit data event handler. I never used single quotes. Everywhere I'm using double quotes. When we are using ID property, we are using double quotes. When we are using empty space, we are using double quotes. When we are passing some parameter, we are using double quotes. When we are passing OData field names, we are using double quotes for get property. When we are passing string values, we are using double quotes. I never use single quotes in controller file. When we are providing JSON model global, there also we are using double quotes. When we are referring OData field name in filters, there also we are using double quotes. When we are referring aggregation property, we are using double quotes. When we are providing the target name for navigation, there also we are using double quotes. So for any string, if you want to pass any string, make sure that that string is in double quotes in general. Pass any string, use double quotes. Okay. So single quote is used in one of the view file, not in controller. Single quotes is not used in controller till now. It is used in view file. Like path colon OData field name. But this is required when you are attaching formatter function. Only in this syntax that is mandatory. The syntax allows single quotes here. Formatter dot formatter function, for example, status double F. So when you want to maintain data binding with OData field along with formatter function, then you have to use this single quote syntax here. And that is used in view file, not in controller file. And when you want to maintain data binding only, double quotes in view file, they are maintaining data binding. This data binding with some text screen element, text property or input field value property. In double quotes, we are using flower brackets and providing the field name. Here, no formatter is used. So in view file, there is a confusion. In view file, There can be single quote, double quote. Single quote, you have to use it for data binding with OData field name when you are attaching with formatter function. But instead of formatter function, if you just want to maintain data binding, then directly use double quotes here. But in case of controller, in controller file, to pass any string to any method, that string value, you can put it in double quotes. Okay, yeah, next down.
Hi Vijay, instead of passing single by single field, can we hold complete record in data object?
That's what I'm saying. In that case, you have to use a different method. We have used get property. What you do is directly use get binding context. Try this, I'm not sure, but use get binding context and get the list item. That list item, you can pass it to data object. Data object dot record. Try this. I don't think it will work, but try this. You can pass list item. So instead of using get property with single field each time, you can use get binding context on table.get binding context. You'll get the complete list item record. Try to pass it to the data object. Try in this manner.
Okay.
Yeah, next down.
And one more query is sometimes when as you shown when we are passing from one view to another view, greater than data object greater than slash you are using, right? But so while we are using double data by double OData double entity set, that the time you used greater than only, not
that is for collection
of
of records. Collection of records, this is single record. In today's session, we are dealing with single record. So you have to use directly greater than slash field name.
Okay.
Single record we are populating here. In case of table, we are getting data from second OData service. That is getting collection of records. Here we are just displaying single record. So the syntax will definitely vary. So second OData service, we are using text string element in a table. In table, in cell section, we are using text string element, text property, something like this. Here, we are maintaining data binding with OData 2. That is OData model 2 greater than field name, OData field name. Because table itself has an aggregation property. Items here, we are using OData 2 as a model name, as a prefix, then greater than slash, we are using entity set here. But for simple form, there is no aggregation property. Please remember that. For simple form, there is no aggregation property. Today we use simple form. Simple form doesn't have aggregation property. Simple form doesn't display collection of records. Simple form will not display collection of records. It will display single record. So for simple form, there is no aggregation property because it will not display collection of records. It always displays single record. That's the reason why in simple form, when you are using text string element, text property, here directly use model name. Model name, in our case, JSON model greater than slash, then data object field name. So here in previous sessions, we have used second OData service, which is having a table. Table displays collection of records. Items is aggregation property. There we are configuring entity set. And then we are referring field name. But in today's session, simple form is not having any aggregation property. Because we are not dealing with collection of records for simple form. Anyhow, simple form will not accept collection of records. It will always accept single record. So you have to use model name greater than slash that field name. Model name greater than slash field name, because entity set is not used anywhere here. Yeah, next down.
Hi, I have a question regarding the pattern concept. So when we are navigating from work list to object view, is it that code is not using JSON model, right? It is using that pattern thing, right?
Pattern that is used only for individual values, not for records or collection of records. So through navigation to transfer single value, then we can use a pattern inside a root. But in real time, I don't think always we pass single value. We pass record values, or we pass collection of records. That's the reason why JSON model is important.
So similarly,
JSON
can we use the JSON model for the pattern?
No, pattern is different. JSON model is different. Why you are comparing?
No.
Those two are different things.
No. In the pattern thing, when we are configuring the route, can we use the JSON model inside that pattern?
No. What is the syntax you want to use? Tell me that.
No, currently you mentioned only third view, right? Instead of third view, can we mention like object view? Can we mention JSON model and the field name?
If you want, you can try like this here. In the last session, we have used like this dot get owner component.
No, not in the code, Vijay. I'm asking like in the configuration, we configured, right?
In configuration, you can't directly use JSON model. No.
But,
JSON model, you
but
can't
how
directly.
come for the object view we have the employee set and the field name user ID, right?
That is because when you're configuring, when you're creating an application through template, it is taking a user ID as object ID. So here,
no, if the same,
now
we have the same we have the same requirement to navigate to the third view. Yeah,
then
here.
add one pattern here. Add one pattern here also.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Can we use the JSON model and the field?
No. You can add a pattern, but not JSON model. You can't directly supply JSON model here. I don't think it will work. This will work for OData model. So here we have used a default pattern third view, but what you can do is you can use some other pattern. You can provide something like XYZ here. You can give some name XYZ. And there, from coding, you have to pass XYZ equal to something like some dynamic value or static value, whatever. Okay.
How this pattern is different from target? Like where exactly the application is using this pattern?
No, this is configuration. Application is not using this anywhere. It's a configuration to pass a single value. When you are navigating to object view according to the standard template, it is expecting a value here, and that is available here. If you go to code editor, then all those things are used internally. This is all configurations. So here also they are using that. In same manifest.json file, when you configure something, it generates some configuration code like this. In configuration code, whenever the target is reaching object view, then it is expecting a value from an entity set, EMP set, that is object ID. Object ID is nothing but our user ID according to our application template creation.
Is the object ID only visible when we navigate to object view?
Key fields are mainly used.
But if we are here we mentioned only one field, right? But there are other fields in the object view, right?
So what?
No, that's why how SAP is transferring the other fields, since we have mentioned only one field here, right?
SAP is not using other fields here. It is using single field. Why? Because here, when you create an application, you have to go back to this one. When you create application from template, for example, if I select worklist template, so here, if I select EH7, so if I select that service, for example, same as it is, that OData project SRV, and here you can see This collection ID is nothing but object ID here. After selecting entity set, it is taking collection ID. That is nothing but object ID. Here, we can see in data bindings, object collection ID is taken as user ID at the time of creating an application through template. So that is nothing but object ID.
Okay. So whenever we create an application without template, so we never use this kind of pattern in our custom application.
It's not used. We have to use a panel concept. For navigation purpose, we use a panel concept. That I've already explained in UI5 development, especially in your batch, right?
No, what I'm saying, the pattern is not important for when we develop a freestyle application. Is that true?
Whatever we are doing is also freestyle. This is also
No,
freestyle application.
This is the template based, right?
Template based freestyle application. This is a template based freestyle application. In non-template freestyle application, it's not required. There we use a panel. We don't use routing technique. In regular old UI5 apps, there is no template. So no manifest.json file is required. So we use basically panel for navigation purpose without routing. And we use JSON model. JSON model is common. We use JSON model for data transfer. It can be single value, single record, or collection of records. JSON model for data transfer. This is the approach we follow.
Not
old
only
Wi-Fi
UI
apps-
app. I'm saying even in new apps, Fairy apps. So when we develop the app without using the template.
Okay, just stop it there. Let me explain. Fairy app means it's always a template based. You are misunderstanding that point.
Okay, we always use either work list or master detail template. That is
Exactly, yes. Fairy app means it's a template based app, always. Fairy app you can't develop without a template. Are you getting my point? So I think from the beginning you are having a confusion here itself. Old UI5 apps are nothing but UI5 apps that are developed without template. It will use only UI5 framework directly. UI5 framework plus OData concept. That's it. But in new Fairy apps, all new apps are basically new apps. They are Fairy apps. Okay. Here we have to use UI5 framework. That means libraries, classes, methods, properties, plus OData, plus template is used. Fairy template is used. That's the reason why we are calling it as Fairy app. Fairy template can be either master detail template or worklist template, whatever. So UI5 apps means no templates. UI5 apps are developed using just only UI5 framework plus OData. There is no template involved here. In case of Fairy apps, all Fairy apps, whether it is custom Fairy app or standard Fairy app, it will use UI5 framework plus OData. On top of that, the third category is Fairy template. It can be master detail template, or you can use worklist template.
okay. So we never. So when Fairy app means we always use the template.
Template based. It's a template based, or it can be Fairy element. You can use list report, but they are also templates basically. You can use Fairy elements. That's nothing but again they're second version of your templates, like list report also you can use, but ultimately they're template based. Overview page, they're also like templates internally.
So then what is freestyle application then?
Freestyle application means use a template. On top of that you can add whatever changes you want. So here in Fairy there are two things again. These are all covered in basic level. Okay, anyhow, so Fairy will use Fairy templates. Fairy, second thing is with Fairy elements. If you are using Fairy templates, then it is freestyle Fairy apps. freestyle free apps, we call it as. If you are not using templates, if you are directly using only free elements with CDS concept, then they are non-freestyle. Why? Because the limitations. When you are using free elements, there are limitations. You can't write whatever code you want here. If you are using free templates, those applications are free freestyle applications according to SAP. If you are using free elements, then they are non-freestyle, because whatever you want to do, you have to do it at CDS level. In the backend CDS level, you have to do it, but in the front end, there is a lot of restrictions. In the front end, there is no chance of writing the code in case of free elements. Whatever you want to do, you can do configurations, but not the coding in the front end. The coding will happen in the back end. So they are non-freestyle here.
Okay.
Any application which uses free template, we call it as a freestyle free app. Any application which uses free element, it's a non-freestyle.
Okay, so whenever we develop a freestyle application based on the Fairy template, on top of it, if we create more views, so then we no need to worry about the pattern thing.
Yes.
Is that true?
Pattern is not mandatory. Pattern is just one concept. The pattern is a replacement for your JSON model in case of a single value. So here, you can use a pattern. We call it as a match pattern. That is for single value. When you are navigating from one view to another view, say suppose I want to pass just a single value, especially a key field value, then you can configure that in manifest.json file, and through coding you can pass that value. Same like what we have done in the last session. But it is not mandatory. We can use JSON model. JSON model supports single value. It supports single record. It supports multiple records also. So this is a generic concept now. JSON model is the most generic way of transferring data, whether it is single record or single value or multiple records. But pattern match is just only for single value. Simple data sets, we call it a single value in general.
So what is match? What do you mean by match, pattern match here?
That's the name of the keyword, pattern match, we call it as. It should match with the key field.
So does it compare any value when we are running application?
It will compare with the value available in entity set. According to this one, pattern match is nothing but, we call this pattern as pattern matching, basically. So it will check this value, whatever value you pass dynamically through coding, it will check whether that value exists in EMP set or not. That's the reason why we are calling it as match. If the value, whatever you pass in your coding, if it is not part of this entity set, then it will throw an error. So match is not found, so it will throw an error. That's the reason why we are calling it as pattern match.
Okay.
So if the value you pass is not in entity set, then it throws an error. So that means it is comparing that value with your value available in entity set. Entity set contains collection of user IDs. If the value, whatever you pass, that user ID is not part of entity set, then it will throw an error or it will not navigate at all. So pattern match, because compiler, or I can say the application at runtime, will check for value in entity set according to manifest configuration file. It is checking the value in entity set. That means it is checking for a matching pattern. Checking a value is nothing but it is trying to match a pattern. If the match is found, it goes to the next view. If the match is not found, it throws an error, it will not navigate. Okay, say suppose here you can see, for example, think like this. In third controller, I think we have written this. in third controller, let me use some random value. Instead of 1001, 1001 is value available in entity set. If I use like this and run, now I'm going to third view. From third view, if I click on back button, now it is throwing an error. EMP set is not available. Basically, it is not able to find the pattern match value. Whatever the value I've configured here, that value is not found in the entity set. That's the reason why it is throwing an error. Change the value. This value is not part of user ID inside an entity set. So it's throwing an error when you run the app. Let me run it again.
So does it show it in the URL?
If you click on show, if I click on show button, I think it will throw that show. It will show the error, or you can press F12. Now it is not running the app at all. Okay, so here I'm going to second screen. There is no problem. When I go to third screen, there is no problem. When I go back, it is going to check the value whatever you have provided in your coding in an entity set. In entity set that is not available, so you can see automatically you're getting that error. So press F12 somewhere here, and you may get some information, some message information here.
But if we can implement a similar logic for the third view and fourth view, right? Using this pattern logic.
Yes, you can implement in case if you want to pass single value.
Okay. Okay. I have a different question on the second row data. So when we have written some code for the second row data, right? Like create the OData set model, and so why do we need to do that? We haven't done anything for the main OData, right? So why do we need to do that for second OData?
Main OData is taken as a main service. I think I've already covered that point. So here, if you go to manifest.json file, by default, it will instantiate with OData model. If I go to data source section, that main service doesn't require any OData model because internally it uses OData model.
So that internally generating that logic, whatever we have written for the second
Exactly.
OData. So where is that? Can I see that?
No, not for second OData. For first OData, internally it will, at runtime it will generate. You can't see that directly.
Okay.
Main service doesn't require any creation of OData model object. It is a main service in our manifest.json file. So main service, for accessing the values or records from this main service, it doesn't require OData model creation. For second service onwards, third service, it requires OData model creation. Why? Because main service by default internally, when you run the app, it will internally generate an object for OData model class. It will connect to that service.
Okay.
So for first OData service is treated as main service. Okay. So this doesn't require, any OData model object creation. Not required. If you want, you can create, but it's not required because it's a default service for that app.
Okay. I have another question regarding fragments. So if we need to do like any event handling on the fragment, like how do we do that?
I'm not sure about that. Try to open one standard application there. You can find it. Generally, we don't implement event handlers in fragment. Fragment.xml file is for loading the screen elements.
No, if we like, for example, if we need to trigger a message box, right? But for that message, okay, good.
Fragment.xml file is an XML file. Here we need to use screen elements only, not event handlers associated with it.
No, if we have like button on that screen element in the fragment, like how do we handle
For that? You have to access the fragment dynamically, then you have to access a controller. So here you have to add some lines. If you go to standard application, you will come across that. So here, let me check whether there is any fragment here. Okay, you can see. So here also there is a lot of disturbance from your side, Srikanth. Okay, so here you can see. Just try to mute after asking your question because there's a lot of background noise. So fragment definition can have a dialog box, which I was pointing in the last session. So in dialog box, you can have confirm button, cancel button. Here you can use press event and you can assign actions here. That means event handlers. Now where these event handlers are implemented, search in those controllers. So fragment.xml file, here there may be some controller which is implementing that. Let me check here. Search with this name on confirm. So here you can see they have created one separate .js file. They have created one subcontroller for .js file. In that they are adding event handler function keyword and they're implementing that. So for fragment, you have to create a separate file. If you want to implement event handler, to add event handler to event off screen element inside a fragment. For that screen element, there should be a separate controller. We need to create a separate controller that we call it as technically like subcontroller for fragment file to handle its responding event handlers. So according to standard application, what they've done is they've created a fragment here for, in one of the case, they've created a fragment here like approval dialog.fragment.xml. In that, they are using dialog box screen elements here, dialog box with approve button, confirm button, cancel button, and some text they are using. But they are also using event with event handler. But that event handler, you can't directly implement in controller. What you need to do, you have to create a separate controller for that. Same like this. Here you can see they've created one subcontroller here. They are not doing it view level. They are trying to do that by creating a separate controller. This is a normal controller not associated with any view. It is associated with a fragment. So here in that, you can see on confirm action. This is an action that is triggered when you trigger confirm button in a dialog box which is related to a fragment. So that code gets executed. On cancel action. So this code gets executed through fragment related event handler. So you have to create a separate file. That's the main point here. We need to create a separate.
So it searches through all the controllers where this function exists.
Is that question?
Yeah, that's what I was. So there is no link, right? We did not mention about the controller in the fragment file, right?
You have to establish a link. That's what I'm saying. We have to create a subcontroller. That means you have to establish a link to a fragment file to handle its event handlers.
So that link, where are we establishing that link?
We have to do it in single line. I can't explain. We have to go through a lot of story behind that.
For example, in the normal view, we are just assigning the controller, right? For that view.
Which controller you are talking about?
For example, if you go to object view, so we are mentioning about the controller, right? For the corresponding controller, what is the corresponding view, what is the corresponding controller?
No, for each normal views will have its own controller. The code is auto-generated for that. We don't establish any link.
Yeah, when we are creating it is automatically linking, right? But in the object view file, we can see that controller name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, similarly, so where are we establishing the link for this fragment file controller?
We have to do it. We have to manually do it. That's what I'm saying. We have to manually do it. Everything is not
But if
auto-generated.
you go to the standard fragment file, there is no, they did not mention the controller name, right?
They are trying to do it dynamically. So here, you can see they're trying to maintain it for approval here. This is clearly saying that it is for approval. That means it is related to this one, approval dialog box. So they're trying to do it dynamically. So you try to go through this code, then you'll get more clarity. So they may be referring that dynamically. So here you can see that they're initializing that in controller file .js file. They're trying to initialize approval dialog box through dynamically accessing a fragment, and they're referring that approval dialog. Approval dialog is nothing but approval dialog box dot fragment dot xml. They're referring to this file. So this controller .js file is accessing this approval dialog through this code here. They are writing 2 lines of code here in this case. So you also need to do the same thing in case if you want to do it. They are creating one initialize method. There they're trying to access a fragment dynamically, XML fragment, and then they are accessing that fragment name here. Yeah, this is just a namespace. This is a namespace. This is a view folder. I think this is a view folder, and this is a subfolder. And then they are referring to a fragment name, approval dialog. That's a fragment name because approval dialog is .fragment.xml is a fragment name. So it is trying to access that through this line. So we have to do that. So similarly, we have to establish a connection in the same manner. If you are implementing event handlers for that button of a fragment. But ultimately, it has to provide a namespace folder. In case if there is a subfolder, use that subfolder name and then fragment name. So subcontroller has to access a fragment. Again, ultimately it has to use namespace dot folder name dot. If there is a subfolder, sometimes there is a subfolder, but in this case here you can see in standard application there is a subfolder. Inside a view there is a fragment as a subfolder. You can also create like this if you want. If there is a subfolder, then you have to provide that subfolder name and fragment name. But you should not provide fragment.xml. Fragment.xml is not required here because by default it refers to fragment file. So just provide fragment name here. That's it. So that is how your controller can access a fragment with this approach: namespace, folder, subfolder, and fragment name. Yeah, next doubt. Any other doubt? Vivek, Krishna, Aftab, Nagraj, Jayakar.
Vijay, I have a last question.
Let me give chance to others. I'll come back to you.
Yeah,
Lakshman,
we have
Abdul,
okay.
Praveen, Rajesh, Satish.
No, Jay, I'm good. Thank you.
Abdul, Nagraj, Jayakar, Ashraf, Varsha. Any doubt in the previous sessions or today's session?
Sir, I have one more doubt.
Yeah, what's that?
Actually, I have created a chart screen element, but everything is fine. No syntax error or nothing. But actually, while running the app, it is showing that data binding is not correct. Invalid data binding. So
You're talking about assignment related?
No, not assignment. A regular class only.
Okay. What type of code you have written?
Same thing. Whatever you have given the note.